What's up? Big fine Thursday it is today. We'll Fix It team on deck. Guys, thanks for tuning in. If you're a subscriber to my other channel, you've seen this in the background. It's a 97 model F350. Got a 7.3 Power Stroke. Last of the goods. Customer brought it to me because of possible, well, it was hard starts. It would turn over kind of slow, and then when it did, if you'd have to hold the gas to get it to stay running. And sometimes these things, when they turn over slow, they'll do a fuel dump in the cylinders. It's a diesel, by the way, so let me clarify that. And it will, they can happen. But what I ended up finding was, because he said there's a possible oil leak, you noticed something. I've seen diesel fuel kind of trailing at the back of the engine there, down at the bottom of the transmission. And these things have a weep hole at the back of the motor because you've got a high pressure pump and you have a low pressure lift pump that pumps the diesel to the injectors to be injected in the cylinders at time of ignition. Now, I'm not a diesel specialist, so let's not get cloudy here. I know a lot about these things, but some of the late model stuff I stay away from just because of the level of complexity and some of the things that you'll get into that that's a whole nother base altogether. I stick to these cars with gas engines and some of the older diesels like this here, just because I'm one man. I can't do it all. Now, I'm going to spin the camera around. I'm going to show you the high pressure pump, and I'll show you the lift pump, and I'll show you the fuel that's kind of puddled up in the valley of the engine. Now, what's happening is the fuel drains back down out of the high pressure pump because it's going back to the lift pump, and there's either a diaphragm is ruptured or something. It's not the low pressure lines. I've checked the clamps on them, but we'll know. I'll get it off, and we'll see the weep hole. But let me just give you an idea of where it's at. And this is what I'm going to do to get to it. There's my combobulation to get up here. This thing's kind of tall. This is a turbocharger. Uses exhaust pressure to turn an impeller to pull air in and pressurize it, give you a higher atmospheric pressure, which then you can match that with more fuel and get a lot more power. So that's how that works there. Now, this right here with the big cap is the high pressure pump. Well, that's the filter housing. The high pressure pump is actually down in here. It runs off of a big gear on the front of the motor, and you have a fuel line going to injectors over here. Yeah, right there, with that purple. You've got another one over here to this other bank on the cylinders. Same thing. There it is right there, going over there with the green. And then over here in the center of the engine, you have the low pressure lift pump that actually brings the fuel from the tank and puts it in, and puts it to the pressure pump. So see if I can get a good look down in here, you guys. There it is. You can see that looks that's diesel fuel sitting down in that very, very low spot right there. I cleaned it really well while it was running, and I had my light, and I looked, and you can just start to see it barely dripping off the bottom of that pump. So something's happening there, and it just started. So what I'm guessing is if this thing sits overnight, I'm gonna flip back around here. If this thing sits overnight, and it does, it's going to bleed off. All that fuel will bleed off, and it has to pump that up. You might not get air in the system because it's kind of sealed off, but something has to give. Air in a diesel pump is like a no-go. There's nothing there. So that makes kind of for hard starts. Got a new pump coming. It's not the easiest to get to down in there. It'd be nice if I think I can get it out without having to take that turbo off. It's been a while since I've worked on one of these trucks. So here we go. We're going to do it together. We're going to cut the camera for a minute, get some work done, and then as I get into it more, I'll take some more videos. So here we go. So what I'm going to end up doing is, because I know there's another fuel line like way down in here. It's the third line way down inside of here. And we're going to just pull this fuel bowl filter housing off. That's what we're going to do right here. A couple of fuel lines and some other little stuff here. Just go ahead and get this out of the way. It's too bad that YouTube has copyright strikes. I could listen to my radio when I do this, but I can't. Got to have the silence. And you can listen to me. Yay. All right. So I'm pulling off some of these fuel lines, and yes, air will get in the system, but we'll address that. Get it out. There there's 1, 2. We'll get that connector off. We're gonna take these 2 bolts out. I'm gonna need both my hands. There's a strainer behind this right here. And then there's a bolt down the side of this, 13 millimeter. I'll get my light and I'll show you once I get a little bit more of it off. But it's just sort of, just got a lot of stuff to take off. You got to be kind of tedious with it. Just be careful. Okay, so do you remember I showed you there? I told you there would be an O-ring, and I got this housing, fuel bowl housing off. There was an O-ring. I'll give you a logistics again so I can come back together because I'm getting there to it. All right, so that was sitting in there like that. And we had those 9/16 lines we took off, and I pointed there'd be a strainer right there. Well, let me get the strainer out. Check this out. This is good because this thing did kind of run a little bit weird, and it was leaking fuel too. But this is, and I was getting ready to wipe this thing down and clean all that gunk off of there. But there's the little strainer that goes in there, and if anybody's been to college before or had any fun growing up, it's like, wow, that looks kind of familiar. But anyways, that is a bunch of, good light here, a bunch of carbon. I already took a rag and started wiping it off. I said, no, I need to show this to the people. Boy, this thing was stopped up. And it'll get a new filter, and I'll put some new lines on it. That could be rubber coming off from some of the lines that are down in the bottom. These rubber lines, when they go bad, they might not leak from the outside, but you'll get deterioration from the inside. I've seen rubber hoses do this before. My camera's dirty. Yeah, that's a little bit butter. But see, you've got a rubber line right there, and there's another rubber line that intersects coming off the pump, and you've got another rubber line that's not focusing because my camera is terrible. Wow. There it goes. So right here, these rubber lines will deteriorate from the inside. And that one there looks kind of old. And that rubber will get packed in that screen. It comes off in shards. And so now the next step is to remove a few here. I've already got this big old banjo bolt off at the back. I used 1 1/4 inch, and I was able to fish it around in there and get it out. Broke it loose, and used the open end to finish it off. You'd always want to use the box end when you're working with bolts and wrenches, because the box end has better grip than the open end and will keep you from messing stuff up. Anyhow, I can't get this all the way off because there's a connector that goes through that housing. So we're just going to leave it off over here to the side for the time being, and we'll continue removal of this feed pump, low pressure pump. All right, thanks guys. I'll be right back. So here we are with the lift pump out of the way now. Probably should have said this before, but we had no problems this time. But you need to be really, really, really careful when pulling that thing out. You don't want the little lift, that little rod, to come off the bottom of this little push rod, which is used to actuate the pump. It runs off the camshaft. Better late than never, but yeah, we didn't have any issue. But that's the hole that it goes in, and thank goodness it stayed put. But and as you can see, here's what the pump looks like. The old one, it's gone somewhere. Oh, there it is. Here's the old one, and I'll transfer. I'm gonna put we'll put new hoses on it and all that, new clamps. So what it was doing was, there's a weep hole right here, and fuel was leaking out of that and leaking down and just kind of coating the top of the motor with fuel and causing it to gain air in the system, making it have a really hard start. And so now that we're on the getting back together road, let's go ahead and get her back together. Everybody, so as you can hear, I'll give you a rundown here in a second, but let's just take a look and see how it all looks put back together. So check this out. Let me give you a little rundown on the last little bit of the assembly. You know, getting it apart is pretty easy, but you're going to fumble with this where they do I guess you want to call it the intake Y pipe, because it's where the turbocharger pushes air into this is the intake. So to get this back on, the easiest thing that I found was to I had the whole thing off. I took this rubber boot stayed on the Y pipe, and this rubber boot right here I slid onto the motor. I carefully put it up here because I don't want to mess the O-ring up that's between that. And then it gave me the ability with both clamps off. I just let the clamps stay off to get it slid on there, and then I put the clamps back together once I got it slid there. And that was just super easy. That was how I did that, and it was a smooth reinstall without tearing, because you can, if you're not careful, you'll tear that boot up right here, and you can get them new and all that, but if you're trying to get a job out, that's not what you want to do. So anyways, there's a cover that goes over this, y'all seen, but it just bolts on with 3 bolts. But that right there is lift pump replacement. Oh, one other thing, before I started it, of course this was all cleaned out, and then I used just regular Dexron 3 fluid, transmission fluid, and I filled it up. I didn't fill it up to where it ran into the tube that's right around here. I should have videoed that, but I was just busy. I was trying to hurry and get this done. But I just filled it up to let the fluid, the transmission fluid, you've seen it bubble out some air. Then I carefully lowered the filter element down in there, not to push the fluid into that tube that's in the middle, because you don't want to push any trash into the main pump. But I didn't have to do anything. There was no air in the system at all. I mean, there was, but that transmission fluid can kind of purges it out. And I gave it a little throttle just to let it idle up some, and I heard a little misfire pushing some air out one of the injectors, but there was no issue at all on the startup. It was real easy. So you can be confident if you do that with some ATF fluid in there, you'll be just fine. So anyhow, I thank you guys so much. Let's flip the camera back around. You guys are awesome, by the way, really are. 782 subscribers as I've posted this video. What an honor, you guys. And you watch the videos too, so that's really awesome. This channel will serve a great purpose later on, because I do other stuff as well on YouTube, if anybody knows me real well. But anyhow, long story short, you guys are just absolutely amazing. So thank you very much for joining the We'll Fix It team. And I hope that this video does everybody a little bit of good. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.